The first time she knocked on my door, every instinct I had told me to stay quiet and pretend I wasn't home. 7 months had gone by since she moved into the apartment directly across the hall from mine. And during every single one of those 7 months, I had done something that, looking back, feels almost embarrassing to admit. I shut her out completely. Not because she had ever done anything wrong. Not because she was difficult or cold. If anything, it was the complete opposite that unsettled me. She was warm, genuinely, effortlessly warm. The kind of person who held elevator doors open for strangers and actually remembered the names of everyone in the building. The kind of person who quietly watered the forgotten potted plants lining our hallway when the landlord neglected them for weeks. The kind of person whose easy laughter drifted softly through the corridor on gray winter evenings, the way a lit window looks from the outside on a freezing night, inviting, alive, and somehow aching. And that was exactly why I kept my distance. Because after everything life had put me through, kindness had started to feel like a trap. Before we go any further into this story, take a quick moment to like this video. Drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. Share this with someone who believes in second chances. And subscribe to Sif Stories if you believe that even the most broken hearts deserve a fresh start. 7 months before she knocked on my door, I had arrived at that building carrying nothing but 2 worn suitcases and a silence so heavy it had settled somewhere. Deep inside my chest, the kind of silence that doesn't leave when the noise does. 2 years before that, my life had unraveled in ways I had never once imagined possible. A marriage I had poured 8 years of myself into ended in a single, quiet conversation that somehow felt louder than anything I'd ever experienced. My wife packed her things methodically, leaving behind an empty side of the closet, and a home in Chicago that suddenly felt like a museum, full of things that used to mean something. I wandered through those rooms like a stranger in my own life. What broke me most wasn't the betrayal itself, or the arguments that had slowly poisoned our last year together. What devastated me was the moment I understood that the person I had built my entire future around had quietly, gradually stopped loving me, long before I ever let myself see it. After the divorce, I became a different version of myself, quieter, colder, guarded in ways I hadn't been since I was young. I stopped picking up phone calls. I stopped showing up to the dinners and get-togethers my friends kept trying to pull me into. I went to work, came home, made dinner alone, and repeated the same hollow routine every single day, like a machine that had forgotten it was ever built to feel something. That was the man who moved into apartment 4B. That was the man who needed those walls more than he needed anything else. The very first time I saw her, she was in the hallway, arms tangled around 3 overstuffed grocery bags while fumbling with her keys to unlock her door. One of the bags gave out, and oranges scattered across the floor, rolling in every direction. I stood there for half a second, and the decent part of me almost moved toward her. But I didn't. Instead, I stepped carefully around the mess, gave her a stiff nod, and disappeared behind my door without saying a single word. I still think about that moment. It still stings. But back then, it felt like the safe thing to do. Over the weeks that followed, our paths crossed constantly. In the elevator, at the mailboxes downstairs, near the entrance where she'd often sit on the bottom step with a cup of coffee, patiently feeding the stray tabby cat that had unofficially adopted our building. Every single time she would look up and smile. And every single time I gave her nothing more than a tight-lipped nod before retreating. But here's the thing, I noticed her even when I was pretending not to. She almost always wore oversized sweaters that made her look smaller than she was. Her hair was usually pulled into a loose ponytail that swayed when she walked. She had this quiet habit of humming under her breath when she thought she was alone. Soft, tuneless little melodies that somehow made the building feel less like a place people just slept, and more like a place people actually lived. But it was the way she treated people that I found myself watching most. One evening I saw her parked beside Mr. Henderson, the retired veteran on the 3rd floor who received almost no visitors. She wasn't just with him, she was listening to him, leaning forward, fully present, as he walked her through old stories from his years in the service, as if every word out of his mouth was something worth remembering. Another afternoon, without anyone asking, she helped a young mom wrestle a stroller up 2 flights of stairs, chatting the whole way up like they were old friends. She carried a kind of quiet, unassuming goodness that most of the world rushes right past without noticing. And somehow, that was the most uncomfortable thing of all, because it reminded me of someone I used to be, before life had slowly convinced me that caring too much only ever leads to getting hurt. Months crawled by like that, brief, wordless encounters, polite nods. Two people separated by 12 feet of hallway and a wall neither of us had built alone. Then came the night everything shifted. It was raining hard that evening, the kind of relentless Seattle rain that smears the city lights into blurry watercolor reflections across the wet pavement. I had just dragged myself home from work, exhausted in that deep, bone-heavy way that goes beyond tired, when I heard a knock at my door. At first, I assumed it was meant for someone else. Nobody knocked on my door. But then it came again, soft, almost tentative. I pulled it open slowly. And there she was, standing in the hallway, her hair faintly damp from the rain, a small and slightly nervous smile on her face. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. She looked like someone who had rehearsed something and was now second-guessing every word of it. Then she asked me something I never saw coming. She asked if I wanted to come over for a cup of coffee. Not sometime this week. Not maybe when you're free. Right now. 7 months of silence between us, and she was standing there asking me to share a cup of coffee like it was the most natural thing in the world. Every reflex I had screamed at me to say no, to tell her thanks some other time, and quietly close the door and return to the safe, numb loneliness I had so carefully constructed around myself, but something in me didn't move. Maybe it was the way she looked at me, without judgment, without expectation. Maybe it was the sound of the rain behind me, making the apartment feel smaller and colder than usual. Or maybe somewhere underneath all those walls I'd built, something finally recognized that 7 months of someone smiling at you, someone you gave nothing to in return, deserved more than another closed door. I hesitated, and that hesitation was just long enough. She laughed softly and explained that she accidentally brewed way too much coffee and didn't want to sit there drinking it alone. It was a little awkward the way she said it, like a reason she thought up quickly. But there was something so genuinely human about it that I could bring myself to refuse. So, for the first time in 7 months, I stepped out of the apartment I had been hiding inside. I followed her across the hall. Her place smelled like cinnamon and fresh coffee grounds. The living room was small, but it felt warm in a way that had nothing to do with the thermostat. A soft amber lamp glowed in the corner beside a small stack of books. A little green plant sat on the windowsill, its leaves brushing gently against the glass as rain streaked down the other side. She handed me a mug and settled into the chair across from me. For a while, we didn't speak. We just drank our coffee while rain tapped steadily at the window. And here's what surprised me most. It wasn't awkward, not even a little. It felt like something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Eventually, she started talking. She told me she'd noticed me the day I moved in. She noticed how exhausted I always looked. How I never lingered in the hallway long enough for anyone to catch me. How I moved through the building like someone just trying to get from one day to the next without being seen. And then she said something that stopped me cold. She said she never thought I was rude. She thought I was hurting. Hearing that out loud, from someone who barely knew me, hit somewhere I hadn't expected. Because she was right. She had seen exactly what I had spent 2 years trying to hide from everyone, including myself. I asked her why she had waited a full 7 months to knock on my door. Her answer was the last thing I expected. She said some people need time before they're ready to let the world back in, and she hadn't wanted to force that. At night, we talked for hours. Not about anything dramatic or heavy, just the ordinary, wonderful stuff, work frustrations. Terrible movies we'd both somehow sat through. Embarrassing childhood memories that made us laugh in spite of ourselves. Favorite diners, road trip playlists, what we each ordered at coffee shops when we were trying to treat ourselves. Small things. But for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt something inside me begin to loosen, like a fist slowly unclenching after being balled tight for years. The walls I had built didn't crumble all at once, but for the first time they cracked. If this story is reaching something in you right now, take a second to like the video. Share it with someone in your life who believes in quiet miracles, and subscribe to SIF Stories for more stories like this one. And before we get to the ending, there's something I want to ask you. Drop the words "second chance" in the comments if you believe that life sometimes places exactly the right person in your path at exactly the right moment. Because here's what I've come to understand. Sometimes healing doesn't announce itself. Sometimes it doesn't arrive in a dramatic gesture or a life-changing moment you can point to on a calendar. Sometimes it shows up as a tradition. Over the weeks that followed that rainy evening, coffee became our ritual, sometimes at her place, sometimes at mine. We never forced the conversations or rushed the silences. We simply learned to share space. And slowly, so slowly I almost didn't notice, I started smiling again, laughing again, noticing small everyday things I had stopped paying attention to for years. The way morning light falls across a coffee table, the sound of rain that feels cozy instead of lonely, the strange pleasure of a really good meal eaten in good company. Then one evening, while we were sitting on the front steps together, both of us tossing little pieces of bread to the stray tabby, she told me something that finally made everything make sense. 2 years earlier, she had gone through a heartbreak so painful it had made her question her own worth. The kind that doesn't just hurt. The kind that quietly rewrites the story you've been telling yourself about who you are. And the day I moved into the building, dragging those 2 suitcases with that look on my face, she said she recognized it immediately. Not because she'd read about it somewhere, because she had lived it. And instead of turning away from that familiar loneliness she saw in me, she made a choice to be patient with it, to wait, to knock when the time finally felt right. Sitting there listening to her, I realized something I hadn't fully understood before. The people who appear the strongest are often simply the ones who have quietly learned how to survive pain. And the person most capable of helping you heal is, and always a stranger, sometimes as someone who understands exactly how you broke, because they've held the same pieces in their own hands. The months after that were different in a way I don't have the right words for. Our friendship deepened into something neither of us rushed or labeled. We started exploring the city together on weekends, hunting down hole-in-the-wall coffee shops, taking long walks along the waterfront as the sun went down, laughing about things that once would have felt too small to notice. And one night, sitting on the rooftop of our building as the city lit up beneath a sky that had finally cleared, I felt something I genuinely hadn't expected to feel again. I wasn't afraid anymore, not of caring, not of being known, not of letting someone matter. Looking back now, I still return to those 7 months when I ignored the woman who lived 12 feet away from me. 7 months when I believed that protecting my heart meant keeping everyone at arm's length. 7 months I'll never get back, but that, strangely, I no longer regret. Because every single one of them was part of the path that led to that knock on my door. And here's what I carry with me from all of it. The right people won't break down your walls. They won't pressure you or pry you open or wear you down. They'll simply wait, quietly, patiently, steadily, until the day you're finally ready to open the door yourself. And when you do, you might discover that the kindness you spent so long running from was exactly what your heart needed to find its way back home. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone in your life or a version of yourself you've been trying to get back to, please like the video. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today and leave your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe it. Every share helps SIF Stories reach more people who might need this exact story at this exact moment. Thank you for being here.